TV 30 studio, here's Jim Schneider.
Well, good evening, and thank you for joining us here on inFocus. And we've got a lot on our plate here tonight as we talk about, inFocus being Milwaukee's only live call-in program here that enables you as viewers to participate in the broadcast and dealing with public affairs and so many important things right now. Tomorrow being election day throughout the state of Wisconsin, we're going to be focusing on that quite a bit here tonight, but also we'll be taking a look at a number of actions taken recently by Governor Evers. He's an outgoing governor right now, and even a veto in which he has sided with the porn industry. What's that all about? We'll talk about that this evening. Joining us here in studio, Daniel Degner is returning, President of Wisconsin Family Council. Daniel, good to have you here.
Great to be here, Jim. Thanks for having us.
And Sam Krebs, also from Wisconsin Family Action Legislative Director. Thank you, Sam, for being here.
Thank you, Jim.
Great. Well, a lot that we will be talking about, and a lot on the plate tonight pertaining to the election. I hope you'll be watching. Have handy a sheet of paper, pen or pencil. We'll be giving you an important website so you can learn what is on your ballot as well for tomorrow's election. But first of all, gentlemen, there was a panel of judges that dismissed the challenge to our congressional districts. That just was handed down last week. Sam, give me your reaction to that.
Well, Jim, it's one of two panels that have been tasked with addressing the maps, specifically the congressional maps, looking to see if they're gerrymandered. There's a suit brought by liberal special interest, and the liberal Supreme Court initially delegated this case not to their own court, but then gave it back to these panels of circuit courts, which is extremely unusual. I can't think of a case in recent history where we've done something like that. Mm-hmm. And so the circuit court came back and said, this is extremely unusual. We're not suited to handle this, right. And so they essentially dismiss it off of that basis. There is still one pending, so we'll see what the status of that is. But it does deal a blow to the liberal special interest to overturn the congressional maps. And
the clock is ticking on this, Daniel, because we're not too far away from candidates for congressional seats that have to circulate and get signatures, and we have a primary coming up in August. And so the time is really of the essence.
Yeah, the circulation date is April 15th. And what this makes it very clear is that we will not have new congressional maps. But again, what's crazy from the argument in this is we're being told from the left that these are gerrymandered maps that really benefit Republicans. But if you look at who actually drew the maps, they were Governor Tony Evers, who is a Democrat. And so the liberal logic on it just didn't match up. But also constitutionally, again, as Sam said, this is so rare for the panel to decide. And the panel did not have the constitutional authority to overturn the Wisconsin Supreme Court, who sided with Tony Evers with these maps in the first place.
Daniel, there was a case this past week or so that came out, Childs v. Salazar, an 8-1 decision from the U.S. Supreme Court, and it really is a decision that came out supporting talk therapy.
Yeah, and this is such an important decision for religious freedom, for free speech, all these really important issues that are so important to faith. And this impacts us here in Wisconsin uniquely. And so basically what this decision did is in the state of Colorado had a law that said if you are a licensed counselor, if you're a licensed therapist, that you are only allowed to affirm LGBT ideology. If someone comes to you and says, I have same-sex attraction, I want help with God's design for marriage and sexuality, you can only affirm a gay ideology. If someone came to you with gender ideology concerns, that they said, I'm struggling with gender dysphoria, you can only affirm the gender dysphoria. And so we are really glad for this overwhelmingly stand for free speech at the U.S. Supreme Court, which has ruled that that's unconstitutional. What does that mean practically in Wisconsin? Unfortunately, our liberal state Supreme Court has sided with Governor Evers on that issue here. And so right now, that is the law of the land in Wisconsin, where we cannot have licensed counselors and therapists affirm biological gender in the counseling room with minors. And so we are really hopeful. We plan to move forward in the coming week or so to push back on the Evers administration on that policy, because the Supreme Court has ruled it is unconstitutional. There's no authority that Governor Tony Evers has to pull this to lay this out, and so we are going to make a challenge for them to remove that rule.
We've seen municipalities like the city of Milwaukee, Milwaukee County as well, that have put in what they call a ban on they call it conversion therapy. Some people wonder, is this electrodes and shock therapy and so forth? But Sam, it's nothing of the sort. It's a free speech issue.
Yeah, and that's something that I think is really clear for people who are watching, is that they call these things conversion therapy bans. But what they don't tell you is that conversion therapy, by their definition, definition means anything that they don't like.
Right,
The
right.
traditional sense would be something that electroshock therapy, which we all disavow and think is something that's very terrible. But they're going to try to lump that in with simply talking to someone about where are you at in your journey here. And so that's what Dana mentioned, that this specific case, and has happened over and over again in states and local municipalities. They've passed these rules or laws that say, if the person comes to you and says, I want to explore this, you are strictly, as a therapist, not allowed to explore actually their feelings or their thoughts, but you are said you are to stick to the script and say you are only allowed to promote gender ideology. And so that's really the crazy part, is that this decision was described at the United States Supreme Court level 8-1. That means multiple liberal justices joined with the conservative justice saying that is a violation of the First Amendment. That is a violation of this counselor's First Amendment right to speech. And so the states that have passed these laws, Wisconsin where we passed rules, the local municipalities that have enforced these sort of these phony bans are really on unshaky constitutional ground, and they should be wary, because any counselor could then bring a lawsuit to Milwaukee, to Green Bay, some of these other, I think there's about 20 different municipalities that have passed laws like this. Besides just the state of Wisconsin, I'll make a note that what Dana referred to was that this is not past legislation. This was a rule that was implemented by Governor Evers' administration. So it never had a vote in the legislature. It was a rule that they implemented by fiat because they couldn't get it through the legislature, and then was challenged by the legislature saying, hey, you can't just create law out of thin air. You have to have a statutory authority for this. And so was in the court system. The liberal Supreme Court sided with Governor Evers, saying that, yep, you can create a rule by fiat, that's fine. And in fact, the governor crowed about that exact fiat just a few days ago, the same day as the Supreme Court decision saying that's unconstitutional.
Right.
And so I think it's very interesting to see what's going to happen here. The Governor Evers talked at length about discrimination in state statutes. Well, is he going to address his own discrimination and his own rules against those who have the right to speak?
Right.
We'll
Well,
see.
dealing with this here too, we have the outgoing governor, Tony Evers, has been showing his support for aberrant sexual lifestyle choices, and even vetoed legislation that has put children ahead of the porn industry, I should say, ahead of children. But here's a post that he just put out. And Daniel will have you comment on this. Be a good neighbor, and this is Tony Evers, stand with trans kids.
Yeah, well, I'll just say, again, this is just absolutely just ridiculous and radical. We see the governor continues to advance this ideology. And 2025 was the year of the kid. And what did we see? We saw a bunch of vetoes that would actually help kids. And what is he doing in 2026? The year of the neighbor, but according to that graphic, we see the year of the neighbor is the state of Wisconsin endorsing and supporting the transgender ideology, the transgender movement. He has the governor's seal on the transgender flag. It's absolutely amazing to see how radicalized he is getting. But again, the idea of being there, the year of the neighbor, wouldn't you say that the year of the neighbor, we should be concerned about what is best for our neighbors, what is best to help them? But instead, Governor Evers has fallen for this lie that we see from the left, that in order to care for your neighbor, that means you must fall and believe everything they say, even if it's to their own detriment. And we see time after time that those that go forward with these transgender surgeries, these irreversible surgeries, that it ultimately causes them harm. Instead, we should be focused on how we can rightly help these individuals, and that it addresses the issues that Evers vetoed if he would have passed that legislation. Things like ensuring that children cannot get gender hormones and get these irreversible surgeries and all these different things that are just terrible for kids. That would be being a good neighbor, especially when it comes to saving women's sports and protecting women's sports.
Sam.
Yeah, Jim, and I will say that we've delivered this message over and over again at the legislature, at public hearings, anywhere where we can get an audience to say that true compassion, true love doesn't affirm mistaken identity. And I think that's where the governor really has misplaced priorities, is that love and compassion doesn't say, yeah, go ahead, do whatever you want. I'll take a very simple analogy. When a kid is running towards a hot oven top and they try to put their hands on it, you say, you know what, you want to do that, then that's good for you. No, you say, stop, don't do that.
Right.
Because true love and compassion actually is looking out for their benefit, not just letting them do whatever they want. And this is the same situation where he's saying, hey, do whatever you want. Gender ideology is great. And it's when we see the actual facts that bear out, this is actually really, really bad for our kids. And so that same analogy of if Governor Evers is saying, yeah, put your hand on the stove, it's fine. And the bill, what Daniel was talking about, there was 5 bills that he vetoed. Specifically, 2 of them would have kept men out of women's sports. I don't know how a good neighbor you can be when men are in women's locker rooms. That's not being neighborly.
Right.
I'll tell you another bill that he vetoed. It was to allow kids who had gone through these type of surgeries or hormonal, these cross-sex hormones, those puberty blockers, that if they weren't properly informed about the risks and the dangers of those drugs or surgeries, they would have the right to sue their doctors for not telling them, hey, this could really mess you up. And so it was actually a protection for people who have gone through these surgeries. And it was really interesting. Senator Rob Hutton, who put out a press release on this, noted that Governor Evers only wants to be neighborly, only wants to protect trans kids, but not the kids who have decided that they're no longer trans. There's this hypocrisy that I only will support or protect these people, but not these people who maybe, don't accept my ideology anymore. And so we see the hypocrisy played out over and over again, and unfortunately to the detriment of our kids.
Friends, also, we have another proclamation coming from Governor Evers as he continues down this pathway of aberrant sexual lifestyle choices. And here it is, another proclamation. This one is for the International Transgender Day of Visibility, which he declared this to be March 31st of 2026. Time does not allow us to read through this. You can go to the governor's website, though, and read this. But again, this governor has had just a vested interest. I don't know what is motivating him, but time and time again, the promotion of the LGBT lifestyle choices, and he's right there with his pen to support it.
Yeah, and what's been really kind of amazing to me is we think of Wisconsin, we're told we're a purple state, we're a state where you want to moderate politically in order to win elections. It was really interesting with this Transgender Day of Visibility is we saw Governor Tony Evers, we saw many of the candidates on the Democratic side running for governor, the lieutenant governor candidate. All of them were coming out very strongly and boldly saying, we are out here supporting the Transgender Day of Visibility. And again, it makes you wonder, are they not considering those voters who would have concerns with affirming the transgender lifestyle, but also not just affirming it, but making it a political ideology that is to be elevated and idolized?
Let's hit another issue, much on the plate here tonight. This is a press release, came out today from your organization, Wisconsin Family Action, and it says Governor Evers sides with porn industry over Wisconsin kids. That sounds pretty harsh. What's going on? Sam?
Well, Jim, your audience will be no stranger to the fact that we've been advocating for Assembly Bill 105, which in essence would require pornographic websites to age verify their website visitors. And to be very clear, people, this isn't like a checkbox saying I'm 18. No, this is an actual verification of, okay, are you above or below 18? And if you are below 18, you are a minor, you are not allowed to access pornography, which we've seen in other states have wild success. In fact, 25 states have passed this. Several countries have enacted this nationwide. We've seen upwards of 50 to 80% decrease in pornographic website traffic just from age verification laws. And so we worked very closely with Representative Joy Gobin and others in the legislature to make sure that this bill was passed. It was passed with by bipartisan support. 18 Democrats in the Assembly voted for it. It was voice voted in the Senate, which means there wasn't enough controversy for them to have a roll call vote. Final tally, 75% of the Wisconsin State Assembly voted in favor of this bill, including Democrats and Republicans. And then Governor Evers vetoes it. And in his veto message, the way in what he describes is, here's the reasons why I vetoed Assembly Bill 105. He lays out almost verbatim the same arguments the pornography industry laid out in their advocacy against this bill.
Wow.
And so he repeated the same tired talking points that they have been saying, that big porn outlets like Pornhub and others have been saying, is like, oh, well, it's too hard to implement it, or it's not secure. All of those are tired talking points that have been proven to be false. And yet that was what he leaned on. And in reality, he was hiding behind this veil of disproven talking points to hide the fact that he is harming thousands and literally hundreds of thousands of children here in Wisconsin. There are over 1 million children in Wisconsin, and we know that half of all children, by the time they turn 13, will have seen pornography.
Yeah.
And we know that along with that viewing of pornography comes a whole host of mental health problems. It comes with decreased confidence. It comes with a stronger likelihood that they will have significant relationship issues as they become an adult. And so we see the harm that this is causing, and yet Governor Evers says, nope, evidence is here plain to see, and once again, non-partisan evidence. It was not a Democrat or Republican issue. I point out that governors in other purple states, Katie Hobbs in Arizona, Andy Beshear in Kentucky, they signed these because they saw for what they are, protection of our kids and their innocence.
Yeah.
Governor Evers went the exact opposite way.
This whole matter of the year of the kid was nothing more than just a PR campaign. There was no really, it was rhetoric only, and we have so many instances of that taking place. Daniel, and we've got a few of these. We're just going to have you get brief comments. Here's a story. Evers vetoes bill to opt Wisconsin into federal school tax credit program.
Yeah, and that's just another example of just neglecting the year of the kid that we had in 2025. Basically what this allowed is the Trump administration, through the One Big Beautiful Bill, provided a provision that would allow for scholarship granting organizations for individuals to give $1,700 or $3,400 as a family starting in 2027 to be able to give to public schools, charter schools, or private schools. And with that, they would be able to help aid scholarships for students. The one caveat that this bill had is that governors have to opt in. So in Wisconsin, Evers vetoed that legislation. So we, on this table, anyone in the state of Wisconsin, we can still give towards education through scholarship granting organizations. However, it cannot go to Wisconsin students. And the argument that Evers made and others made was, well, this will give money to private schools. And the contention that I have and the frustration I have with this is, well, so what if it gives money to private schools? This could have also given money to public schools, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but there's a lot of referendums going on in communities around the state of Wisconsin where public schools say we want more money. Well, this could have been a great opportunity to get donations from people in their own communities to support those schools, to support those students. But instead, Evers has turned his back on not just private school students, but also public school students as well.
Sam, let me get your comment on this. Evers blocks effort to undo 400-year veto.
Well, another topic we talked at length about here, Jim, is 2 budgets ago, Governor Evers was created with a veto that essentially gave school districts the opportunity to raise their property taxes every year for the next 400 years. And we're already feeling the pinch of that. My own personal tax bill was significantly higher. I heard of countless people who their tax bill has gone up $400, $500, $600 strictly because of that veto. And so, the legislature said, we're going to try to fix this. We're going to go back, we're going to pass legislation, present to the governor saying, let's go back to what we intended in the bill itself when we negotiated this with you, was that we're going to give this increase for public school students for this budget, and then we'll continue to negotiate that in the future. Yeah. Governor says, nope, I am binding the state of Wisconsin for the next 400 years that we are going to increase property taxes.
Daniel, quick comment.
Yeah, and one of the things that the governor had in that paper he presented, his response was, you should get over it. Again, what is the number one issue we see in Wisconsin is affordability. And the governor's response is, well, you should just get over this increased tax hike.
Yeah,
and I'll let Jim too, the voters still have the say on this. Maybe not on the specific issue, but they will have a referendum before them in the fall where you will be able to vote to change the Constitution to not allow any future governor to raise taxes or fees on you. And so that might play into your decision whether or not you're going to vote for or against that referendum, because once again, right now, according to the Supreme Court, the governor has the power to raise your taxes and fees without the legislature voting for it.
Right, yeah, pretty amazing. Here's another one here. Evers vetoes bills to exempt overtime, cash tips from income tax. I know many of you impacted by that as well. Daniel, we're going to have you comment on this, though. Another press release that came out from your organization, and that is the whole matter of the safe haven law. This is a good thing that happened, was actually expanded.
Yeah, we were glad that Governor Evers at least had the fortitude to sign this bill into law. But basically, in Wisconsin, the previous law was that a woman could give up her child within 3 days after the baby was born without any sort of issues legally. And so this expands that to 30 days. And so we think this is a great win for kids as well as moms that may be going through those crisis pregnancy situations and they might not know what to do. And we hope this gives them more options so they are aware of those options, but also ultimately we want to be able to protect babies.
Great. Okay, we're going to move
Jim,
on.
I'll jump in because it seems like dump on Tony Evers' day, but he's made a lot of bad decisions recently. When he signed that bill, there was also another bill on his desk that would have actually expedited the safe haven process to make sure the kids who are given up are getting placed into good homes as quickly as possible. And he vetoed that bill because it was too burdensome on the state agencies.
And very quickly, where does sports betting stand right now? We know legislation was passed by the Republican-controlled Assembly and Senate, went to him for a signature. What's the fate?
He's got a couple more days yet to sign or veto it. We fully expect him to sign it based on the special interests that are advocating or lobbying the governor. We've seen every indication that he's likely to sign the bill.
Okay.
Yeah, and just going off of something you mentioned, the idea that the Republican-controlled Senate passed it was interesting because the Senate has a rule called the Rule of 17, and what that means is out of the 18 Republican senators, 17 have to agree on it for it normally to hit the floor. Well, half of the Republican Senate voted against this bill. They sided with us on this bill and said this is not good for Wisconsin. So yes, it was passed by the Senate, but it was a majority of Democrats that passed it, not Republicans.
So this was more the rule of the Senate Majority Leader.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Instead of the rule of 17. Okay. Yeah. Very interesting there. Let's move on to elections. And this headline just came out here today from the Center Square. Wisconsin elections chair blames human error for double ballots in 2 communities. Evidently, some voters in Green Bay and also in Racine receiving double ballots coming through the mail. Just beware of election integrity related issues. If there are things that are just not consistent, make sure you reach out to your clerk's office and the State Department of Elections as well. Yep.
Yeah.
So important. Let's talk about this election, though, and many of you watching tonight, because as we have talked about, Tuesday is election day across the state. Polls will be opening at 7 o'clock in the morning. They will close at 8 o'clock tomorrow evening. On Tuesday evening, some of you watching this by tape delay on Tuesday, keep in mind that Tuesday is election day. There are tons of issues on the ballot. I'm just going to kind of go through a few things here. Mayor, Franklin, Delafield, Muskego, Oconomowoc, Waukesha, other places across the state are electing mayors. So it's important that you are plugged into what's happening in your community. We'll give you a website here momentarily. Village President, Fox Point is up for election. County supervisors, and this varies from county to county. I know in Milwaukee County, there's at least 3 contested seats that are going on at this time. School board seats, and friends, there's a plethora here in southeast Wisconsin. Think of the Arrowhead Union High School District, Cedarburg, Cudahy, Elmbrook, Franklin, Germantown, Greendale, Hamilton, Sussex School District. There's the Heartland Lakeside, Kettle Moraine, Menominee Falls, Muskego, Norway, New Berlin, Nicolay, Oak Creek and Franklin, Port Washington, Saukville, South Milwaukee, Swallow School District, Waukesha, Wauwatosa, West Allis, West Milwaukee, and Whitnall. That's all within southeast Wisconsin as far as the school districts are concerned. A ton of municipal judges all across this state, and we're going to put this up here. We can just see the list of school district referendum. Daniel mentioned this here as well, but this is again just more from the area. Dodgeville, 7.5 million. East Troy, 12 million. Erin, 2.75 million. Fond du Lac, $30 million school referenda. Glendale River Hills, 20 million. Hustisford, 3.75. Lake Country, 3.2. Randolph, 2.925. Trevor Wilmot, 6.8. Twin Lakes, 3.2. Watertown, $22.5 million. Whitefish Bay, $135.6 million. Gentlemen, we're talking a lot of money here.
Yeah, well, a lot of money, and again, it goes back to what we discussed earlier. Unfortunately, Governor Evers already turned down free money opportunities for these schools, and it'll be up to the voters to decide. And what's been interesting to see in some of the polling we've seen from Marquette Law School is voters are really concerned about affordability, and they're also concerned about the increases in property taxes. And so it'll be interesting to see how that impacts voters this spring with those referendums tomorrow.
Let me just also mention this. We're going to have our guest comment on the Supreme Court race, but all of these races, and that's just some of the things that are out there. Every race, every ballot is going to be different depending upon your municipality. And it's critical, friends, for you to know what's on your ballot before you go to the polls and cast your vote. We have a website we'd like to share with you that you can see your sample ballot in advance. It's myvote.wi.gov. Write it down, myvote.wi.gov. inFocus.gov. You'll see different ways in which you can know where you would vote absentee. That's kind of over with for now. But where do I vote? What's on the ballot? Register to vote, and also to track your ballot as well if you participated in early voting. But what's on my ballot? You click on that middle button there, and all you have to do is you put in your street address and the city and information there. You hit that little green button, and just like that, your ballot pops up with all the races that are on your ballot for this election. It's myvote.wi.gov. Daniel, it's so important that people go with understanding and knowledge before they go to the polls tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage viewers to go to that right now or even tonight. There's so many times I will receive phone calls from voters while they are literally walking into the election booth, and they're saying, who do I vote for my local election? Oftentimes, it's too late. They miss it, or they go there and they go, I have no idea who this person is or what I should look at. And again, local elections aren't always perfect. It's not always easy to see where each candidate stands on issues. But if you look at who's on your ballot tonight, you can at least look into them for what you can find before you go and vote tomorrow.
Okay, well, the race that's on everybody's ballot is that, Sam, for Wisconsin Supreme Court. This is a 10-year term.
Yes, it is. It's a race between Judge Chris Taylor and Judge Marie Lazar. It is not for ideological control of the Supreme Court, but it is a kind of a splitting point, I think, for the Supreme Court at this point. You have Judge Chris Taylor, who is a self-avowed liberal activist. I would say she's made no bones about her position, but actually that's not true. She's tried to portray herself as the most independent jurist that has ever walked the face of the earth here in Wisconsin. But we have a lot of interesting history that would point to the opposite. You have Marie Lazar, who has served as a judge for 12 years in the Waukesha County area, who is billing herself as an independent jurist.
Okay, so you've got some difference in backgrounds here. One has really been a political activist and has served with the Democratic Party. Also a staunch advocate for abortion, Daniel.
Yeah, Judge Chris Taylor, running from the Madison area. She is originally from California, and she served as the lobbyist for Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin. And for the viewers that are listening, they don't know much about Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin. Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin is the largest abortion provider in the state of Wisconsin. And during her time as the lobbyist, the policy director for the abortion lobby here in our state, she advocated for removing any restrictions on abortion. She's even made it a key platform of her campaign for Supreme Court that she believes that we should have absolutely no protection for the unborn when it comes to the issue of abortion. And
what about Marie Lazar? Has she spoken on the issue?
Marie Lazar has said that she will uphold what the law is currently, which is the 5-month ban that the Supreme Court put in place a couple of years ago, or about a year ago now. And so that has been her campaign position, that she will uphold what is current law and not bring her own personal beliefs into the topic.
You know, gentlemen, I was in northern Wisconsin, met her a few weeks ago, and in a secondhand store, like a bargain discount store, and I heard a couple of employees talking at the register, and they were talking about this. One woman said, well, I know who I'm voting for Wisconsin Supreme Court, and she said, you know, that a woman should have control over her own body, and the other person said, yeah, but you know, there needs to be some restriction there, because there are those, the one wants to take it all the way up to birth, and you're referring to Chris Taylor with that. And as I'm listening to this discussion, I thought, what a crazy topic. This is not the legislative branch. This is the judicial branch, who's supposed to take what the law says and issue their decisions regarding that. But so what has been turned into, and we've seen this happen in the last Supreme Court race or two, it's like they're running for a legislative position.
Yeah. Well, and you know what makes perfect sense for the liberal Chris Taylor, who was a Democrat for about 10 years in the Madison area. And during that time, she was rated one of the most liberal members of the state legislature. And it's one of those things you look at and you go, well, you have a lot more power as a legislator in the judicial branch on the state Supreme Court than you do as one of 99 members in the state assembly. And that's the real concern that the voter should have, is the judicial branch supposed to be looking at balls and strikes, seeing what is constitutional, what's not, or are they there to advocate for those political positions that they do in the legislature?
And Jim, I think maybe we should talk a little bit about that. Daniel said that Chris Taylor was well known as one of the most liberal members of the legislature. What does that mean to be one of the most liberal members of the state legislature? Well, she was elected in 2011 and served at Boxley until 2020, when she was appointed by Governor Evers to the Dane County Circuit Court. In those roughly 9 years that she served as a Democrat legislator, First of all, she made her way up to where she was co-chair of the Assembly Democratic Campaign Committee. What that is it recruited candidates to run for the Democrat Party in the Assembly seats. So she wasn't just a rank and file legislator, she was actively in high-ranking positions within the Democrat Party. Second, she introduced a number of bills that we can look as to say what it constitutes as liberal. Well, it ranges from the silly of she introduced a bill to ban all styrofoam packaging from the state. She authored bills that would allow the Department of Natural Resources to ban hunting on public lands. She authored bills that would allow doctors to be shielded from lawsuits when they don't properly inform their patients of procedures like gender dysphoria treatments. She authored bills that would have legalized same-sex marriage. She authored bills that would have created a right to an abortion and legalized abortion and taken away every single pro-life protection we have in state law currently. She would have removed from state law, including protections for the mother. So when we say that she's one of the most liberal legislators in the last decade, that's the track record that we have to evaluate. Once again, silly things. She authored a bill to cut the salary of then Attorney General Brad Schimmel because he was Republican.
Wow.
So the level of pettiness there, I think, is speaks to not just her as a legislator or her liberalness, but to her character, who she is as a person.
Here is an article from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel I'd like to share with you, and this deals with the spending between the candidates here, and they report this. The last major campaign finance reports in the lead up to the April 7th election were due on March 30th, just over a week before Election Day. The report showed Taylor raised nearly $2.1 million between February 3rd and March 23rd, while Lazar brought in about $515,000, including about $475,000 in monetary donations and the rest in-kind contributions during the same period. Taylor's total includes $700,000 transferred from the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. Lazar received $60,000, so you got $60,000 Republican Party for Lazar, $700,000 from the Democratic Party for Taylor. The latest totals were released as spending numbers show Taylor and her supporters have outspent Lazar and her backers 15-1, according to data released by Ad Impact, which tracks the television and digital political advertising. That is quite a separation.
Yeah, well, and what we've seen, especially in the political realm, is, and Sam's mentioned this before, but in general, Republicans, and they really care about local, they care about giving to an individual, where Democrats have more of a care to give towards the collective ideology. And so what we've seen is billionaires in New York and Illinois and California have said, well, there's a lot of power in Wisconsin, especially the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. And so we are seeing lots of outside state money from places like California, New York, Illinois, coming into this Wisconsin State Supreme Court race, and it's almost all going to Judge Chris Taylor.
I'd like to hit one other issue, and that is endorsements for the candidates. And this came from Judge Lazar's website. It talks about the state Supreme Court. She's being endorsed by Annette Ziegler, Patience Rogensack, justices on the court, Honorable John Wilcox, former justice, Director of State Courts, and then Circuit Court judges. You see the long list there. But something that stood out here, too, was a law enforcement endorsement for Maria Lazar, a number of district attorneys, but the Milwaukee Police Association, the Wisconsin Fraternal Order of Police, and then a number of sheriffs from across the state of Wisconsin that have endorsed her. Now, I didn't see any sheriff endorsements on Chris Taylor's site, but you will find several there that she listed. Rebecca Dallett, these are sitting justices on the Supreme Court. Jill Karofsky, this would be the liberal wing of the court. Janet Protasewicz, Susan Crawford, and then the former Chief Justice Ann Walsh Bradley, the former Justice Louis Butler as well. And then she lists several of the other circuit court around the state that have given her endorsements as well. High level number of these coming from Milwaukee area. But then some other notable endorsements for Chris Taylor. This came out from former President Barack Obama, casting his endorsement, putting out a message here showing his support for Chris Taylor. And not only Barack Obama, but here you'll see We, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Wisconsin, have posted, we're proud to endorse Judge Chris Taylor for Wisconsin Supreme Court. She is also, and she had several unions on her website, but here's the Wisconsin State AFL-CIO. Judge Taylor is union approved, and saying a vote for Judge Taylor. Any comment on the endorsements?
Well, I would just say it's interesting. We see the 4 liberal members of the Wisconsin State Supreme Court have endorsed Chris Taylor, and these are the 4 same members who were recently overturned 9-0 at the U.S. Supreme Court on religious freedom case, Catholic Charities. And we know one thing that's for certain with those liberal justices, as well as what we likely would get for Chris Taylor, is the religious freedom issues will not suit well for Christians like us. And so it's really important from a religious freedom perspective to really understand what these candidates are advocating for, but also to honor God with our vote.
Sam, we'll get a comment from you in just a moment. Friends, I'd like to open our phone lines tonight. And if you have questions pertaining to Tuesday's election, about the candidates, about issues pertaining to the how-tos of voting, that is the mechanics of it, registering, et cetera, pick up your phone, give us a call. Or tonight, maybe you want to say, I'm supporting this candidate because, or I'm concerned because, and this is your opportunity to let us know who it is you are backing for these positions. For instance, who are you backing for Wisconsin Supreme Court, and tell us why. Our phone number tonight for inFocus, 414-935-3030. 414-935-3030 or 800-733-8830. If you'd like to send a text tonight, be sure to include your first name and the city you're texting from. Send it to our text line here tonight, 414-459-9638. 459-9638. If you have questions you would like to ask pertaining to the election, maybe you've got a concern about what's happening within your school district or your municipality, just want to get a comment out, something that you believe other viewers need to know about this election, the candidates and so forth, or if you want to just declare tonight, I'm voting for this candidate because, feel free to give us a call tonight, 414-935-3030 is our number. And Sam, we were just talking about some of these endorsements. Your comments?
Yeah, talk about the endorsements. We'll talk about kind of something that's a resource out there for folks on the Supreme Court race, is that it wasn't very well publicized, but there was an actual debate between Judge Lazar and Judge Taylor. I'd encourage you to go watch it. It was very interesting to see. And yes, Judge Taylor has been very open about her endorsements by Planned Parenthood, by the unions, that she is the Democrat candidate for state Supreme Court. Judge Lazar has taken the more traditional route, and I remember growing up, Supreme Court races, all the ads were about who was endorsed by more sheriffs, or who was endorsed by more district attorneys. That seems to have faded to the past, but she clearly has some sort of law enforcement in her background. But what I found interesting watching the debate between Judge Taylor and Judge Lazar was this tactic by Judge Taylor of, I am very fair and independent. If a pro-life organization was to bring a lawsuit, I wouldn't recuse myself. They can trust me that I would rule fairly for them. And I think that's just, it reminds me of the fable of the guy who's climbing a mountain, and there's a snake who's, says, take me along with you to the top of the mountain. And the farmer says, no, I won't take you with you. You're a snake, you'll bite me. And the snake says, I won't bite you. I will be your friend. So the man says, okay, I'll carry the snake to the top of the mountain. They reach the top of the mountain. The snake comes out, bites him on the hand, and the man dies. And the man's like, you said you wouldn't bite me. And the snake says, I'm a snake. I'm gonna bite you. And as I watched, that's all I could hear screaming as I watched that debate was Judge Taylor saying, I will be fair and impartial. I am not a Democrat. I'm not an advocate. I'm not an advocate activist. Meanwhile, you look at her website. You look at her judgeship application to Governor Evers, where she says, I want to be like this judge in Milwaukee, who's an advocate. And so you see this story of this snake who's going to be, if Judge Taylor makes it to the court, I can see it 2 years, 3 years from now. I told you I'm a snake. Of course I'm going to bite you. And I think for Wisconsin, it's going to come back. If you don't believe Chris Taylor and say, look at her reputation, look at her actions and say, that's what we're going to get on the court. We're not going to get an independent jurist. We're going to get a Democrat legislator on the Supreme Court. And if that's what Wisconsin wants to vote for, then they'll have to reap the rewards of that.
Yeah. We've got somebody in line here. Let's get to the call. We'll come back for more commentary. We have Mary in Milwaukee. Hi, Mary. You're on the air.
Yes, my comment is to you is that I really think that both judges we don't get an opportunity in all branches of the city of Milwaukee. We only hear of them at election time, and I'm kind of tired of that. And I'm tired of the years that they've been serving on the bench, and they haven't showed what they really actually do or to help a lot of these people. I'm tired of the same people sitting there every year. Same old faces, same old, it's time for a change. It is time for diversiveness on those branches of those judges. I am sick of all of them.
Okay.
Really am. I am tired of all the public officials who just keep on running year after year after year. Even our state treasurers, same old people, and they don't really show what they progress or how they help people.
Okay.
Mostly we see their salaries going up high. But when it comes to the real actual thing, it is high time that we look at the people that we are asking to place in office. I am really tired of the same people.
Mary, thank you. Thank you for your call here tonight. And we know that this person is going to be a new individual for the court because it's an open seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. But she was saying, what are these people going to do for us? She wanted to know, but that's not really the position of a judge, is it?
Yeah, well, an ideal. Yeah.
Not necessarily to tell their position.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, and if we go back to Schoolhouse Rock of how the judicial branch is supposed to be, the judicial branch is really supposed to be one that calls the balls and calls the strikes of is this constitutional or not. But again, going back to Sam's earlier point, we saw very clearly in an election ad that Judge Chris Taylor put out, she believes that this election has abortion on the ballot. It is very clear for her that she is going to advocate for abortion rights or abortion access that has absolutely no protections for the unborn. And so in some sense, yes, abortion is on the ballot, but not in the way that she's trying to portray. And I think of what Sam shared of, we as pro-life organizations are supposed to trust that we'll be treated fairly and rightly. Well, how can we say that when her own campaign is coming out and saying abortion is on the ballot?
And I sense Mary's dissatisfaction with the status quo. And
Right,
I really hear that, Mary, because that's where I think Wisconsin is going. You look at the trends and lines, and we will have a new Speaker of the House, we'll have a new Majority Leader, we'll have a new governor in the state come November. There is a time now to turn the page on what we've been seeing the last 8 years in Wisconsin. And it could start, this election could start at November, but that takes buy-in from the people here. I'm glad Mary's listening and turning to this program because it takes buy-in from the people to know who their candidates are, to know what they stand for, to know that when they're saying I'm independent, if that actually matches their actions, or when they say independent and actually their actions are I call it for my team, not for the
and this
team.
is also relays the importance of people going out and voting. I mean, to stay home is really to vote for the status quo. So important. Thank you for your call here tonight, Mary. Phone number 414-935-3030 is our number, 414-935-3030. You can use our text line, 414-459-9638. We have Alicia from Sheboygan saying, I'm voting for Maria Lazar because she's against abortion. And then ask a question. She said, is tomorrow's election going to be the same candidates in November?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you for your feedback too on kind of who you're supporting. We think it's really important for people to know who you're supporting. It really makes an impact when you share with others that information. But how it works in Wisconsin is in the spring we have nonpartisan elections, so the primaries are in February, general elections are in April. And in the fall we have partisan elections, and so those are Republican, Democrat, Green Party, Libertarian, and those primaries are in August, and then the general elections are in November. And so this election determines who will serve in nonpartisan races: Supreme Court, appellate courts, county boards, city council, school boards, those nonpartisan races. And then in August and November, we'll vote for things that are partisan. Things like our sheriffs, things like governor, things like lieutenant governor, secretary of state, Congress, those sort of positions. So the April election will be much different ballots of who is on, what is on, compared to the November fall election.
Okay, so very important to know that distinction, and we do have those two elections coming up, likely in August if there is a primary, more than 2 candidates running for position. But that's when we'll be casting our votes for the next Congress and who is going to be in the leadership in the Wisconsin State Assembly and Wisconsin State Senate. Friends, I'd like to hear from you tonight. Who are you backing for Supreme Court tomorrow? 414-935-3030 is our number, or 800-733-8830. Or if you have a question that you'd like to ask pertaining to just the whole voting process, the number here, or to text your comment to us here tonight, or question, 414-459-9638. We do want to point out, Daniel, that voter ID is required to vote in Wisconsin.
Yep, so in Wisconsin, you need to be able to show an ID that verifies that you are who you say you are. And that was actually voted by and passed by the voters here in Wisconsin. It's part of our state constitution, which is interesting. I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, that Chris Taylor, when she was in the legislature, voted against a measure that would have required voter ID here in Wisconsin, which again, it makes you wonder, where is she on these different issues and how will she side with our constitution that we have in our state? And another thing I just mentioned off of Alicia's kind of question about elections, it may seem like the November election's far away, but believe it or not, in Wisconsin, you can start signing papers to get people on the ballot as soon as Wednesday, April 15th.
Wow.
And so while we are finishing one election in April, we are jumping into the next one within a week.
Yeah, and that's a whole new battery of candidates running for those offices. Your state government officials, your congressmen, and we do not have a U.S. Senator this year that we'll be voting on, but the other offices there. Sam, as you consider this election taking place tomorrow in the Supreme Court, what impact? Some people say it doesn't really make a nickel's worth of difference, does it?
Well, every election makes a difference because you're never sure where that decision is going to come down with the state legislature, the governor. You think about something like COVID that happens once in a lifetime, and how it'll interplay between the legislature and the governor, Supreme Court. And so every election where people are making is an opportunity for you to give your vote to someone that you can trust to make decisions on your behalf. And so this is an important election because, once again, I've never seen such a vast contrast between two candidates where we have between Taylor and Lazar. And so it'll be interesting to see, where does Wisconsin move? Do we continue to move in obviously the last 3 elections, all the liberal justices have won. Will that trend continue, or will it be maybe a surprise and Judge Lazar makes the court? But either way, each election sets up for the next election. It seems like this endless cycle, and it feels like it, being on this side, I'm sure the voters are always fatigued. We've always joked about that when will it ever end? But each election then sets the next election up. And so I think it's really important to know that this Supreme Court election, though it doesn't change the ideological balance of the court, it does really introduce more potential independence, and depending on which way the voters go. But it also sets the stage for November, where you'll have a new legislature and you'll have a new governor, and they'll have to be held accountable by the judiciary. If you don't have an independent judiciary, the people who you would have voted for as governor or for your legislator may not have this impact that you expect, because they're playing in an unfair field. And so every single election matters. I encourage everyone to get out and vote, because it is your opportunity to have your voice be heard. Even if you're not on the winning side, you have to participate in that process.
Yeah. Well, they have said, I don't know who it was, but bad politicians are elected by good people who do not vote.
Yeah.
And the importance of casting your vote, friends, understanding what it is. And I encourage you to go to, we'll give that website again before we close, the graphic, but myvote.wi.gov, to go there to see what is on your ballot. But friends, the issues are so impactful. It does matter who gets on your school boards. It does matter who is your mayor in your community. It does matter who's on the city council, your county supervisors. It does matter. It does matter on all these school referenda that we went through this evening as well. Many, many millions of dollars that are part of that, and so very, very critical.
And Jim, let me put a word in for school district elections specifically, because I've been doing a lot of research. As Dean has mentioned, sometimes our office gets phone calls of people saying, I'm not sure who to vote for my local election, and they reach out to us, and we're happy to do some digging and see if we can find some information that might be helpful to you as a voter, saying, hey, here's people's track record, and here's what we could find. And so, having done a lot of that research, having looked into different school board members in Cedarburg and in Eau Claire and Cudahy and Elkhorn, that those are really important to really look into those people, because it may be harder to find sometimes. They don't have big flashy ads, but most of them have a website or a Facebook page that you can look into. And that really can hopefully show you, hey, this is where this person leans. For example, there was a candidate that I was looking into for someone who called us, and to my surprise, they said, I am fully supportive of keeping parents hidden from knowing that their kids are going through a gender change.
Wow.
Which is a very radical position to take for a Democrat, Republican, any sort of position. But they said, I fully endorse and I would support keeping parents in the dark when their kids are being transitioned at school.
Right.
And so for the people in that community, hopefully they went on that Facebook page and said, okay, now I know what this person's track record is, I'm going to vote accordingly. So I really encourage you, because all elections are local, and so when you want to see change, it happens first in your community, and one of those first places where you can see change in community is on your local school board.
Daniel, address this issue of, I've had people, and I've heard them say, I don't have any children in the district. Why does it matter if I even vote for school board? Or I send my children to a private school, or they are homeschooled. What difference does that make to me?
Yeah, and I always thought that my predecessor, Jillian Appling, handled this really well. And Jillian would say, we want to make Christian education the best we possibly can. But at the end of the day, 87% of Wisconsin students still attend a public school. And so we ought to make public education as good as we possibly can. And really, the next generation is our future. It does greatly impact the sort of culture that we'll have, the sort of society that we have. And especially in some of these public schools where we're seeing radical political ideology being brought up, to have a school board member who says, no, this is a place where we talk about reading, arithmetic, and writing, and not about political ideology, it can make a huge impact in the sort of future that we have, but also what these kids are being influenced with. And if we're Christians, we ultimately care about our neighbor. We ultimately care about how do we do what is good and what brings honor to God. And if we see a school system that is promoting evil, that's promoting transgender ideologies, why would we not want to put Christians in office, or people that believe in biological reality in office, to affirm things that really point us towards God?
Yeah, I think, for instance, the state of Texas, their Department of Education, Texas, tomorrow is voting on whether or not they're going to introduce an element that's going to promote Islam within the social studies of their curriculum. Okay, so these are people that are in positions like this, and it's your local school board members that are going to make determination on issues like curriculum and policies for the school district, and what is taught in the classroom, and are they going to come against teachers that stand by their convictions, and any number of policy-related issues. So that also is critically important. Our phone number tonight, have time for calls at 414-935-3030, 1-800-733-8830, and our text in line 414-459-9638. A text comes from Jean in Sussex. Just says, I'm voting for Lazar. Give babies a fighting chance, is her comment from Sussex.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's, friends, I'd like to hear from you tonight. I'm standing for, and you mentioned the candidate, and just a brief reason why. Again, that you can use the text line 414-459-9638. Sam, it's important for individuals to realize that at a spring election, it's typically light voter turnout. That vote means so much.
Yeah, that's very true, Jim, because turnout decides spring elections. I think we talked about very briefly at the end of last program when we were on here last month, was that turnout is the biggest factor in spring elections. We see people ask me all the time, it's like, well, why are the liberal people winning all these elections in the spring recently? And I'll say Madison knows how to turn out their liberal voters. Yeah. I live in Dane County. We are endlessly targeted to get out and vote, and the pressure and the ads and all that is overwhelming, even more so than other regions. And that's because they have a system designed to get people to get out and vote. They have extremely high voter turnout. And so when you have a county that leans heavily liberal, that turns out almost all of their liberal voters, you have to see, in other counties where maybe there's more of a mix of people and they're not pushing to get out and vote. And that really does make a difference in the margins over time. And so you see this, landslide of voters in one county, and then you see a turnout of, 50% in another county. Well, that county is now not going to have as much representation or as much of a voice. And so we see that over and over again, that turnout is what makes a difference, especially in spring elections, in all elections, but especially in spring elections.
We have Jerry calling from Milwaukee. Hi, Jerry, you're on the air.
Thank you. First off, we need to pray It's one thing to do the political thing, but we need to pray to our Lord and ask Him to make the difference here. Secondly, the day that the Supreme Court elected 8-1 to overturn this reparative therapy ban, I wrote a letter to the governor and asked him to do something to undo our laws according to the Supreme Court following their lead. And then I got in contact with Speaker Voss's office and encouraged them to also put some effort into this and raise up the legislation to do our own change.
Very good.
Leslie, I want to raise up the idea that what's happening in the porn industry is another wrinkle, that on the porn sites, and you don't have to pay for them, there is an offering being made where they offer free access into the chat lines, which actually allows you to be one-on-one with the various candidates or people or whatever. That needs to be investigated. It's being made very available without having to join or sign up for their program. It's free in a lot of ways, and it can be very dangerous for people to make access to this area. So
Great.
I encourage you guys to do a little more investigation there. It's far more invasive than you know.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your call. We're going to just squeeze in Jackie as well. West Dallas, Jackie, you're on the air.
Good evening, Pamela. I thank you guys for listening to these calls, but I got to say, as a woman of God, this is not that difficult to understand that this is innocent blood being shed. Mm-hmm. We need to stand as women of God and men of God and vote if you read the Bible, we know this is innocent blood, that this body, this baby that's inside your body, it's not yours. God has blessed women the right to bear a baby, and the same woman want to turn around and choose when she could murder that child.
Yeah.
Any Christian that do not get out and vote against this evil needs to start reading their Bible more, because there's something wrong with a nation when you three men stand there and trying to be as nice as you can and as polite as you can and say, get out and vote. Stop murdering our babies. Stop standing by the side and allowing this thing to happen. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Jackie, thank you very much. We're out of time here on the broadcast. Thank you for your comment this evening. Friends, a couple of things. Number one, the website to see your sample ballot, myvote.wi.gov. myvote.wi.gov. Click on what's on my ballot. If you need information regarding votes and candidate information, you can go to Wisconsin Family Council. You can reach out to them by phone, 1-888-378-7395. Wisconsin Family Council also has an anniversary gala coming up on May the 1st.
Yeah, that'll be at the Ingleside Hotel in Pewaukee, and you can sign up for that at our website, wifamilycouncil.org, or by calling our office at 888-378-7395.
Gentlemen, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Friends, a reminder, be informed and vote prayerfully on Tuesday. Good night.